We're back today with a ton more Ravnica Legion spoilers to talk about. In this video, we've got guild mages, giant mythic angel constructed nonsense, and a ton more. I do hope you enjoyed this spoiler video, and if you do, remember hit that like button, helps out a lot. Angel of Grace is 3 of anything and 2 white for a 5/4 angel with flash and flying. When it enters the battlefield until end of turn, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. You can also pay 6 mana and exile it from your graveyard and your life total becomes 10. Whoa, alright. So Wizards likes to print powerful angels. We get it. We get the picture. No worries. Make no mistake, this angel is pushed as heck for standard play. Seriously. It's a 5 mana 5/4 angel that comes with flash and flying already. That's very good. But then it stops explosion from killing you, it stops Banefire from killing you, and then you can exile it from your yard to help stay alive. Angel of Grace is very strong and is worthy of inclusion in decks that are looking for a shield turned sword on the battlefield. It literally stops you from dying in addition to being a house on the battlefield. I can't talk it up enough. Look out for this card. Ministrant of Obligation is 3 mana for a 2 Human Cleric with Afterlife 2. This card is actually ridiculous and limited. 3 mana for a 2 power creature that becomes 2 1/1 flyers on death. That's real strong and will be an early pick and limited for sure. It can chump block like a champion and then pressure the opponent's life total, or chump block more to buy you some time. It's a solid card. Unbreakable Formation is 3 mana for an instant. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. If you cast this spell during your main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on each of those creatures and they gain vigilance until end of turn. Hot dang, I love this card. Unbreakable Formation is really good. At first I was disappointed because combat tricks are most valuable when you can use them by surprise, but this feels more like heroic reinforcements than any normal combat trick. Even if your opponent knows about it, those +1/+1 counters aren't going anywhere near creatures that have vigilance and indestructible. Unless you're about to get settled, Unbreakable Formation is going to either deal tons of damage to the opponent or eat up a bunch of their creatures. Standard playable for sure. Benthic Biomancer is 1 blue mana for a 1/1 Merfolk Wizard Mutant with Adapt 1 for 2 mana. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on the Biomancer, draw a card, then discard a card. I really like this. It does so much for a single blue mana, and it's a Merfolk, which actually matters a lot right now. So breaking it down, if you have nothing to do on turn 2, you can make this a 2/2 and loot, then swing in. That isn't bad. Plus, you get rid of cards you don't need. Even if you draw this late game, still you play it, activate, adapt, loot. Having value at all points in a game is a strong sign of a good card. Biomancer is a good card in both adapt decks and Merfolk decks. Salamander Drake is 1 blue mana for a 1/1 with flying. It also comes with Adapt 4 for 8 mana. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each instant sorcery card in your graveyard. Oh baby, we're at business now. Thank goodness it isn't a wizard. What a payoff for a spell slinging deck. Do you know how easy it'll be to cast this for a single blue mana and then another single blue mana to make it a 5/5 with flying? We've seen the Phoenix decks, even wizard decks or Drake decks. Salamander Drake has constructed playability up the wazoo, and I'd be surprised if we didn't see it in some type of counterburn strategy or a Phoenix Drake deck. This might be one of my favorite cards in this set. It's pretty genius. Awaken the Erstwhile is 3 of anything and 2 black for a sorcery. Each player discards all the cards in their hand and creates that many 2/2 zombie creature tokens. What a bizarre card. Forcing a discard from everyone does have value, but unless you have tons of cards and your opponent has almost none, you will be giving them blockers at the very least. Of course, if you're running a zombie deck, this is going to do way more for you than your opponent, so it's probably fine. Could easily see this in Geese and Geralf, Grimgrin, Ghoulcaller Geese, the Scarab God, and more. Easy commander include any potential bomb in limited. Immolating Shaman is 2 mana for a 1/3 Viashino Shaman. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land that isn't a mana ability, the Shaman deals 1 damage to that player. You can also pay 5 mana and the Shaman gets +3/+3 in menace until end of turn. What in the world? This card's so weird. It's a bit like a prison card, taxing your opponent with damage every time they want to activate their Azcanta, or Treasure Map, or Adanto Vanguard, but is also useful as a late game attacker, becoming a 4/6 with evasion. Probably more useful and limited against Adapt, but Harsh Mentor saw some play, probably because of the higher power. Alright, never mind. Card's too weird. Just next. Biogenic Upgrade is 4 of anything and 2 green for a sorcery. Distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures, then double the number of +1/+1 counters on each of those creatures? Seriously? I know this is 6 mana at sorcery speed, but you can't tell me that Voral isn't gonna freak out over this, or Anafenza or Atraxa. You get my point. Expensive, yes, but in Commander, this is gonna make so many creatures so big, Experiment Crotch 2. Oh, it's so good. Guardian Project is 4 mana for an enchantment whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control. If it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card. I don't know if I've ever seen a card more meant for commander than right here. The card literally draws its power off of singleton decks. By drawing on each of your non-token creatures entering the battlefield, Guardian Project will basically refill your hand forever, replacing creatures again and again, as long as your deck is full of creatures to trigger the project or flicker. Hilarious card. Galloping Lizrog is 3 of anything, 1 green and 1 blue for a 3/3 frog lizard with trample. Get it? Lizrog? Amazing. When it enters the battlefield, you may remove any number of +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control. If you do, put twice that many +1/+1 counters on the Lizrog. Jeez. Talked about an adapt payoff card. My goodness, look at this thing. It's going to remove a bunch of adapt counters that you have on your other smaller creatures, then double them up and trample in for a bunch of damage. Simic is going really deep on this +1/+1 counter nonsense, and I can see why. You want to pay off? There's one right here. Oof. Warrant is 2 hybrid white and blue mana for an instant. Put target attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library. Warden is 3 of anything, 1 white and 1 blue for a sorcery. Create a 4/4 Sphinx creature token with flying and vigilance. Yes! This is a great split card. It has so much versatility. It's either excellent early game as a way to save you from a bunch of damage while also setting your opponent back a bit, and then if you don't need it for aggro decks or creatures in general, Warden can get you an evasive threat that could turn into a win condition. This kind of flexibility that control decks are looking for, this is what they want. Big fan of this card. Warrant alone is worth playing. It's very nice. Thrash is 2 hybrid red and green mana for an instant. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. Threat is 2 of anything, 1 red and 1 green for a sorcery. Create a 4/4 red and green beast token with trample. Another great split card. This will be a solid removal spell for the aggressive Gruul decks in the early game and a fine finisher if drawn late thanks to the beast getting trample. Obviously, the majority of the value in this card is the removal spell, but it's nice to have something to fall back on if the board is empty or you just have no good targets. Anything is better than a dead card. Anyways, Thrash is just nuts. In addition to hitting a creature, it can whack a walker at instant speed. Getting really hard to find any reason to dislike it. It's a friggin' great card. Revival is 2 hybrid white and black mana for a sorcery. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Revenge is 4 of anything, 1 white and 1 black for a sorcery. Double your life total. Target opponent loses half their life rounded up. This is a really bizarre split card, but I think it's good. Revival is pretty cheap at 2 mana, and it does give the flexibility to find a 3 mana cost creature, which means you can run this in mono white and grab Banalish Marshal back. Doesn't get History of Benalia, but still gets Adanto Vanguard, or basically anything else in that deck besides Venerated Loxodon. I think Revival alone is going to make this card playable. The sorcery speed is unfortunate, but it's still strong. We've been introduced to most of the set's guild mages, and I am all over the place on excitement level. Combined Guild Mage gives +1/+1 counters to creatures entering the battlefield this turn, then moves them if you need to. Pretty versatile. Cult Guild Mage is kind of rough. It does come with discard on a stick, but it's expensive and slow, and then it taps to ping an opponent or planeswalker. Not terrible, but not great. Not nearly as aggressive as Red-Black wants to be as far as I'm concerned. Syndicate Guild Mage taps giant creatures for a pretty cheap cost, essentially keeping them into prison until you can deal with them later. Then it has an expensive second ability that will end board stalls in limited, but it's very late game. Then we have Senate Guild Mage. I am very excited about Senate Guild Mage. You can pay 1 and tap to gain 2 life, or you can pay 1 and tap to loot. That's so good. Super cheap cost to do either of those, and they both have value, the loot in particular. I cannot properly explain how good that is. Definitely the strongest Guild Mage we've seen so far. Another strong day from Ravnica Legions. I think today the Simic really came out to play, including a bunch of constructed playable cards. I didn't think Adapt would be able to hold up to some of the other mechanics, because it does seem a bit slow and expensive, but with the addition of powerhouses like the Drake, the Biomancer, and the Lizrog, the Combine are really out here. They're really doing it. Teach me to underestimate them. Anyways, I need to see how you're feeling so far, so please comment below with your thoughts on these spoilers and on the set in general. I'm pretty dang excited, and I can only assume that you are as well. Seriously, the set's gonna be nuts. And be sure to stay tuned to the channel for the latest and most reliable Ravnica Legion spoiler information you could ever need. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. This video is brought to you in part by TCGplayer.com. You can get boxes of Ravnica Legions pre-ordered right now on TCG Player for $97 each by clicking the link on the screen. If you don't have a local game store or yours is charging way too much, I got you back. Right here, click the link, helps the channel out a bunch. I can afford to pay rent. It's crazy. Enjoy.